Alright, so here's some tips for getting started in After Effects. The first thing you'll want to do is go to here to New Composition and click on it. Compositions are like workspaces or canvases that you use within After Effects to make projects. In this case, we'll just call this Composition. And within compositions, you can change the dimensions. So you have width and height. So I'm going to change this to, for example, 1920 by 1080 pixels. So now this composition will be landscape or horizontal. And we can also change our frame rate. So frame rate is how many frames will be played every second of your animation. So in this class, we'll be working at 30 frames a second, and then we'll press OK. All right, so the first thing you might want to do when you're in After Effects is figure out how to add things and make things move. So there's a bar up here that has some tools. So this here is our selection tool. We also have things like our shapes. So if I hold and click on this, I can see rectangle, rounded rectangle, ellipse tool, polygon, star, etc. So I'm going to make a rectangle by pressing this. And if I click and hold shift, you'll see that this would be a square. And if I get rid of shift and unpress it, now I can kind of conform this to however I want. So I'm dragging this around. When I let go of it, I now have a shape. And so I'm now going to either press the selection tool, or you can also press V, shortcut V. So I'm going to press V. And now when I go here and click on this, I can start to animate this shape. So down here, this is your timeline. This is how you will see what your animation will look like. And when you go down here to transform, you can see there's things like position, scale, rotation, opacity. These are all properties that you can animate in After Effects. And so I'll show you guys how to do that real quick. For example, if I click here on this timer icon on position, you can see there's a little blue dot there. So I've made a new keyframe. And keyframes are telling After Effects that you have set where this position is at. So you can see the coordinates here. And if I move this timeline playhead over here to, for example, 2 seconds, and I grab this shape, you can see that I'm moving it all the way over here. And if I go back and then press space to play it, you can see over 2 seconds that shape is moving. So you can see that this composition is 5 seconds long, but what if we want to change it to be something shorter? So there's a couple ways you can do this. One way is you can go to composition and you can go to composition settings, or you can press Command K. So if I press Command K, you'll see that I get brought back up with this dialog box here. And I can change this here. I can change how long this is. So you can see now this is 5 seconds, but I can change this to, for example, let's set it to 2 seconds. So if I change this, I can either press Enter, OK. And if I now play this again by pressing space, you'll see that our shape will just keep animating over and over again here. So one thing that you'll want to do in After Effects when you make a shape is you might want to rotate it. So if I grab this shape, I'm actually going to delete this and make a new one. So I'm going to press and hold shift, and I'm going to drag this shape out. And I'm going to go here under rectangle, go under transform, and I'm going to change the rotation here. And so let's see what happens. So interesting. So the shape is rotating around this thing that's called the anchor point. So this shape will animate around this anchor point no matter what. And it's a little bit weird because when you make the shape, you might expect that it might just animate from the center. There's a couple ways you can fix this. One way is you can go here up to this tool called Pan Behind. And if I hold on Command and double click it, while this shape is also selected, I can go here, I'm going to double click it, and you can see that now the anchor point is in the center of this shape. So if I try to rotate this, I'm going to go here, I'm going to set a keyframe for rotation, I'm going to click on it, and then I'm going to go forward to a second, and then I'm going to move this rotation like this. You can see that now this rotation is moving from the center of the shape, which is really helpful, because if I play this, it's going to look like this. So within this timeline, you can also choose how much of the timeline will actually be rendered or shown in your video. So you can grab this here, you can see this little work area start, you can grab this and drag it. And so now the timeline will start from this area here in the timeline. You can also change where it ends. So you can go here, you can drag this in, and now you can see that the timeline will play this very short section of the animation. So this is good to have. You can also change the beginning and the end point of this timeline by pressing B. So B is begin. So you can see here, if I move this here and press B, the timeline will start from there. And if I go to example for here, if I want this to end here, I can press N, and it'll play like this. And so these shortcuts are really good to know. I'm going to drag this back out so I can see the whole thing. And then all your transforms are here. So if I also want to position this, I can set a keyframe here. You can also drag these position keyframes or rotation keyframes or scale keyframes to happen whenever you want in the timeline. So you can always change these. You can also delete them. So for example, if I want to get rid of this, I can. So if I were to drag this here and get rid of both of these keyframes, delete, you can see that now there's no animation happening. And for example, if I press on opacity, so I'm going to set a keyframe for opacity, and then I'm going to go forward in time, and then press this to 0. You can see that when I go back and play this, it fades out to nothing. And I can also change this so it's going to start at 100 here, and then it's going to go to 0, and then for example, if I want it to go back to 100, I can go like this, and After Effects will set another keyframe at this point in time. So you can see it's going to fade out and then fade back in. And it's also useful to know that in After Effects, just like you can zoom in and out of the canvas, you can also zoom in and out of the timeline itself. So this little area down here is how you zoom in and out of time. So you can see the closer I get, I can actually see every little frame that's in this timeline. And in our case, 30 of these frames will mean 1 second of animation. So if I drag this out, I can see our whole timeline again. And so we can go back to composition settings, and if we want to make this animation longer, we can go to composition settings, and you can change this to something like, so this is 2 seconds. Let's say we want it to be 30 seconds. So I'm going to press OK, and then I'm going to go here and zoom out on the timeline. So you can see now I have 30 seconds of animation in this project. I'm also going to zoom out here. So now, if I go back and play this, the animation will fade out and then fade back in, and then something interesting will happen. Now it's gone. Why is that? So the shape layer is being cut off, and we can actually extend that out so that it goes the whole timeline. And you can also make it shorter, but this is how you actually show this timeline here. And what's helpful to know is that with this shape, if I were to make another shape, so I'm going to go up here, I have a rectangle, and now I'm going to change the color to something like yellow. If I add this here, so I'm going to make another rectangle, I'm going to drag this out. You can see that this yellow rectangle is above this white one. So what this is showing in the timeline is anything that you have here, the higher it is in the timeline, the more front it will be in the file. So, for example, if I wanted to put the white one ahead of the yellow one, I could send it back here. And I can always change that. I can also move this whole time here and get rid of it altogether so that I won't see it until 4 seconds. So if I play this, you can see that it'll play through, and then the yellow rectangle will appear. And then you can always rename these. So if I press on shape layer 2 and press enter, I can rename this yellow rectangle. And it's always a good idea to name all your layers so that you kind of know what you're working with. You can also be even more organized by changing the color of these layers. So I could make this, for example, purple. So you can see this bounding box here is purple. And this one here is white. So I'm going to select both of these here and delete them. And then I'm going to show you a couple things you can change in After Effects that will help your workflow. So we're going to go up here to After Effects, go to Settings, and then go to General. So actually, before I do that, I want to point something out. So when I make a new shape in After Effects, so for example, if I click and hold while holding Shift, I will make this rectangle, or this square here. Say I want to rotate it, I can press R with this selected, and it'll bring up rotation. And same thing with position. If I press P, it'll go to position. I can press S for scale. You can also press T for opacity to fade this in and out. But I'm going to go back to R for rotation. And then I'm going to hit a keyframe here for rotation. I'm going to make this go out a little bit farther, and then I'm going to animate this. Now, this might be what you want to do, but you'll see that when I play this, the shape is animating around that pivot point. And so it's really helpful in After Effects to start off your file where you can automatically have the anchor point of every shape set up in the middle of the shape when you make it. So one way we can do that is we can go to After Effects, we'll go to Settings, and we'll go to General, and we're going to turn on a setting called Center, Anchor Point, and New Shape Layers. So if I click this on, we'll see that the behavior is a little bit different. So if I do the same thing, I go to Rectangle, I press and hold on the mouse while pressing Shift to keep it square. You can kind of see there's the anchor point, but when I let go, now it's in the center. So that's what that setting does. So I'm going to show you again. So if you click on this, press rotation, I'm going to go a little bit farther here, and I'm going to move this. So if I go back and play this, press space, now the shape is animating from the center. And you can experiment with this. So if you click on this, press Y, you can also select here. This is called the pan behind tool. This is how you change where the anchor point is at. So if I change this, so I move this anchor point over here, now it's going to animate from that corner. So that's one setting that's really helpful to change. Another setting that's really helpful to change is, and this will be for future use, so you won't need it yet, but there is a menu under After Effects, go to Settings, and then go to Scripting and Expressions, and you're going to want to turn this setting on. It's called Allow Scripts to Write Files and Access Network. And so you won't need this now, but it's helpful to have on just because if you ever use scripts or plugins with After Effects, you'll need to have that checked on for After Effects to actually be able to see those scripts and plugins. So press OK. And then the last thing we're going to change is we're going to go to Edit, go to Keyboard Shortcuts. We're going to open this here, and so this is what this will look like. We're going to go over here to the hotkey F1, and if there's anything already here, we're going to want to get rid of it. So click here, and then I'm going to go over here to Command and get rid of it. So we're going to want to swap this in with a shortcut that is called Purge All Disk and Cache, all memory and disk cache. So what this does is it frees up the amount of RAM that After Effects is using on your computer. So the thing about After Effects is while you're animating, it's helpful to have an undo button, but After Effects saves so much of that information that over time, as you're working on a project, you might have, for example, 90 gig of storage that After Effects will take up that's just memory. So it's really helpful to clean that out throughout the day. And during an average workday, I'm clearing this out every 20, 30 minutes. So I'm going to go up here. I'm going to type in purge. And you want to see purge all memory and disk cache. So if I click on this, I'm going to drag it all the way up here to F1. And you can put it wherever you want, but this is a good place to put it. And then once that's there, I'm going to press OK. And you can see, now that we're back here, if I use that hotkey, if I press F1, you can see that there is some memory that After Effects has saved. In this case, it's not a lot, but this can get really out of hand if you don't ever empty it.